We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Okay, so for today's historic speech, we're looking at JFK's speech at Rice University, talking about going to the moon. He was talking about our moonshot, right, as they refer to it, about trying to win this race to space, right, the space race, trying to get out there and prove that America is great and America is amazing. And what he tells us in this speech, among other things, is that America needs to prove that it's great by being great, by doing great things. That's not really what we hear anymore. What we hear now is about, well, America's great because we say so. America's great because of our history. Okay, well, yeah, we have some interesting history, but you only really get to claim you're great if you're doing great things. And listen to the positivity in this speech. Listen to the inspiration. When was the last time you heard a speech as inspirational as what you're about to hear? It inspires me just listening to it, and I've listened to it a bunch of times. Okay, we don't hear politicians talk like this anymore. Now it's about tearing things down, about ripping each other apart, and sometimes that needs to be done, but we almost never hear any positivity anymore. We never hear anything that inspires citizens of the United States. It's just about breaking things down. So keep those things in mind as we listen to clips from this speech.
Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardships, as well as high reward. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. But this city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
Okay, right there, he's saying, yes, what we're trying to do here, very difficult. And there are many people who don't think we should do it. We should just give up and talk about how impossible everything is, and everything's too difficult, and it's going to cost too much money, and we should just sit around and do nothing. And he says, no, we are going to attempt this thing, right? All the things that we could be attempting as a country, and we don't, because it's going to cost too much money. It's going to be too hard to do. Listen to the cheering he got, the applause that he got when he said, yeah, it is going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very expensive, but we are going to do something amazing. We are going to do something historic. We are going to change the world because we are not afraid of doing hard things. In fact, he mentions it again and again throughout this entire speech. We are not afraid of things that are hard. We will do them because they are hard, because them being hard keeps other people from doing them. So we're going to get in there and we're going to do these things. We're going to be the ones who achieve greatness because we will do the hard things that other people are not willing to do.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time. And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space. Those who came before us made certain that this country rode the first waves of the Industrial Revolution, the first waves of modern invention, and the first wave of nuclear power. And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it.
Yeah, so again, he's hitting on this idea. If we want to be great, if we want to be the leader, then we have to get out there and lead. So much of what we hear about now is just sort of living off our past. Oh, America has done great things in the past, so that makes us the greatest. But what are we doing now that is great? What are we doing to lead the world today? If you look at a lot of what we're doing, you really have to wonder, are we leading the world, or are we just trying to tell the world and bully them into saying we're the best? But what are the actual accomplishments? There's not as many in the last few decades that we can hang our hat on and say, this was amazing, this was great. Of the things that we could be going out there and doing, we could be trying to cure cancer. We could be trying to, what would a modern moonshot be? What are we leaving ourselves behind with the current administration? How about solar power? Solar power is clearly going to play a very, very large role in the future of the world, and we just decided to give it all away to China. We're not investing in it. We're gripping onto coal and oil instead of saying, hey, why don't we become the world leaders in solar energy? Why don't we lead the whole world? And we can not only make the world a better place by using cleaner energy, but we can be creating the jobs. We can be creating the new companies that are going to lead the world in solar energy. Instead of thinking that way, right, we just decided, let's grip onto coal as long as we possibly can. Instead of doing great things, right? Instead of doing things that change the world for the better, we hold on to the ways that we know will make us money for a few more years, even if they're destroying everything. We don't think the way that they think in this speech right here. We don't think that way in this country anymore.
And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding.
So when was the last time that we had presidents talking about the need for knowledge and understanding? A lot of our knowledge and understanding, a lot of times people look at a situation and say, well, why should we pay for that research? We don't know how it's going to pay off. But the truth is, if you go back and you look at many of the research that's been done, people didn't know what it was going to be used for when they were doing the research. Right? They did the research, they learned new things, and then great stuff came from it. Like GPS is a perfect example, right? So research was done in GPS. For a long time, the military had this, and now we all use GPS. It's a part of everyone's life. This wasn't a situation where we waited around for some billionaire to just say, oh, GPS might be a good idea. No, it was developed over a long period of time with lots of research being done, and now it benefits the entire world. Right? And sure, people are making money off of it. Good. That's things need to happen that way. But when you do research, you don't always know exactly how it's going to pan out. Right? You kind of have to do the pure research first, and then the applications come later. Right? You figure out how you're going to apply that kind of research, and it's good to hear a president saying science is important, understanding is important. These are things that we need to trust in and we need to believe in, rather than a country where we are very anti-science. We don't believe in science. We don't trust science. We'd rather believe in this other things that are not so much science.
In short, our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men, and to become the world's leading spacefaring nation. We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. And only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war.
All right, so see how he distinguishes here. Yes, we need to do the science. We need to do the research because we know we're going to use it for good. We can't wait around for other countries to do it, and then we don't know, they're the leaders, they're calling the shots, and then we don't know if they're going to use these things for good or for ill. When was the last time you heard people talking about mankind for our country? When was the last presidential speech where we talked about serving all of mankind? We need to do this research. We need to spend this money. We need to do this project because we want all people, the whole world, to benefit from the work that we do. And yeah, we'll be the leader because we're the one out front doing the hard work. We're doing the things that other people aren't interested in doing. And he's not sitting here talking about how much it's going to cost and which company's going to make a lot of money and which company isn't going to make as much money. He's talking about this is a thing that needs to be done for humanity. We don't use that kind of basis anymore. Everything is judged on profit. What's the profit that somebody's going to make? Is there a billionaire out there who can make a few more billions off of this? If yes, then we'll go ahead and do it. But if not, if it's only going to help humanity, if it's only going to make everyday people's lives better, then we shouldn't be doing that. That's not profitable, right?
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
I mean, it's just inspirational. It makes me want to go build a rocket and try to get to the moon. It's just talking about these are the things that we're going to do. We know it's hard. We know it's going to be difficult. We know it's going to cost money. But these are things that are for the betterment of humanity, right? There are things that will come from this research that will make us all better. And I know the space race was a messy issue. You can make arguments that not everything about it was fantastic. I get it. But all in all, a lot of good things came out of that space race. And we didn't sit around and complain about how, it was going to cost too much. It was going to be too difficult to do. We stood up and did it. When have we done that lately? In our lifetimes, when have we done that? We wage wars, right? We cause a lot of destruction, but I wouldn't really put those in the same category. I don't think those count as amazing feats, right? We're not doing things that people don't know if it can be done. We're not really doing the kind of things that leave other countries in awe of what we're doing, right? We need to ask ourselves, do we like to view ourselves as leaders of the world? Do we really deserve that place anymore? And I kind of wonder, if we're not doing moonshots, if we're not doing amazing things, do we really deserve that title?
The growth of our science and education will be enriched by new knowledge of our universe and environment, by new techniques of learning and mapping and observation, by new tools and computers for industry, medicine, and the home as well as the school. Technical institutions such as Rice will reap the harvest of these gains. And finally, the space effort itself, while still in its infancy, has already created a great number of new companies and tens and thousands of new jobs. Space and related industries are generating new demands in investment and skilled personnel.
So that is exactly right. Notice all the things that he was mentioning at the beginning, the educational institutions and the government and all that kind of research, the science and technology that needs to be done. Those are all the things whose funding is now being cut. But he laid out how those are the things that create new businesses. Those are the things that move us forward, and we all gain from those. We shouldn't be cutting our funding in those areas. We should be increasing the funding. Imagine if more people in this country were stronger with science and mathematics. How many newer companies could there be creating amazing things? But we've largely stagnated in a lot of ways. Sure, we have a couple of big companies, right? We've got a couple of phone manufacturers, but where's the diversity? Where's the mass number of people with these highly scientific and technical degrees to move forward and create the kinds of businesses that he's talking about? No, we cut funding for all those things. We're cutting funding for universities. We're cutting funding for research. We don't think the way he talks about anymore in this clip right here.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there, and new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
So the audio and video get a little off kilter right there at that point. But what he's saying is, yeah, you go out and you do the amazing things, and then you get credit for doing the amazing things. That's what makes you a leader. That's what makes you great. But you have to do the great things And hopefully there's a spirit where you do it because it's there, right? Why did you climb that mountain? Because it was there. That's the kind of mentality we need to get into. Not always thinking about what's the profit margin. And of course, you got to worry about money, right? You always got to worry about money. But you don't have to view everything in terms of what is the exact return on this going to be by next quarter. We can think long term. We can educate people and we can think long term. What's the payback a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, a generation from now? What is the payback going to be if we take some of these moonshots, all these things that we think are impossible in this country, if we actually tried to do them, create new jobs, they would create new companies. They would do all the kinds of things that he talked about in this speech. So what about our moonshot? What could we do if we got away from the question of only asking what's the profit that can be achieved by the next quarter, and we look down the road? What amazing things could we do? What about cancer? So I know cancer is actually a bunch of different diseases, so that's fine. Let's cure a bunch of them. Let's put a bunch of money into cancer, cure many of the cancers that are out there, and then we could share that for a reasonable price with the rest of the world, and that would fund our next moonshot, and we could try to do something else. The world would love the fact that we came up with cures for many of these kinds of diseases, and then we shared it with the world at a reasonable cost. Sure, we could make some profit off of it, but really the goal would be like this, to make the world a better place. Do something amazing that makes you great, that make other countries look at you and go, man, America sure is great. Look at all these cancers they just cured, and they're helping the rest of us in these other countries with those cancers. That would be amazing. I mentioned it earlier, solar power. What if we really went in and we really focused on making solar power cheap, affordable, efficient, right? And then what would come from that? There'd be a bunch of businesses that spring up that would be global leaders with solar energy, right? And of course, solar energy by itself is not the full answer, but it's a pretty big part of the solution, right? And we could be the world leaders in that. Solar energy is going to be around for a long time. And in the history books, it could say, yeah, the main achievements in solar energy came out of the United States. They put money into it. They created some companies for it. They did research in it. And the world is a better place because of it. These are the kind of things that we could do to make the world a better place. We could think smaller. What if we just decided that everyone in this country should have health care? Right? That'd be a bit of a moonshot for us, because I keep being told that it's impossible and it could never possibly happen, except that it's already been done in every other established modern nation in the world. We can't seem to pull it off in this country. So maybe we could just do a little mini moonshot to prove to ourselves that, yeah, we actually could improve the lives of our own people in this country. We sit around and we talk about how expensive things are going to be and how impossible they're going to be, and then we all believe it. Well, if you went back in time and you told people that we were going to send a rocket to the moon, a lot of them didn't believe it at the time, right? They didn't believe it. They thought it was made up. A lot of the older generation, they didn't even think the moon landing was real when they were watching it. They thought it was just some made up thing. It's hard to imagine what can be done, but we have to get out of this idea of only asking what is the profit that can be achieved in the next quarter, and that decides whether we do things or not. The world is moving ahead, and we are going to get left behind, or we could stand up and we could be the leaders like is being described in this speech. We don't hear these kind of speeches anymore, because the truth is that's maybe not what our country's about anymore, right? I don't like saying that, but maybe we have to face the fact that our country is really about creating billionaires and poverty, and that's the two things that we mainly create. Maybe we need to change our focus to being about something different. Maybe we need to find our moonshot. And I think we kind of need to, right? What about the environment? This global climate, which is self-destructing, our country could step up. Instead of being a major climate denier, we could step up and try to tackle the problem. We could find ways of cutting our emissions. We could find ways of reversing the problem as it is occurring. We could attack this on lots of different fronts, but instead we sit around and we refuse to attempt the greatness that can be achieved by this kind of an effort. We as a country need to find our moonshot. And there's a bunch of them. I just listed some. There's a bunch I didn't even mention, right? But we should be trying to achieve these great things because, as is mentioned in this speech, The way that you get to be known as a great country is by doing great things. And I don't know if we do as many great things anymore. We're afraid. We're scared. We're divisive. We're mad at each other. We tell each other things are impossible. I think we could do more. I think we need the right attitude. And part of that is by, making sure that we educate people. Making sure that people have access to an education so that we can create more scientists and engineers and all these kinds of people that are going to move technology forward, not just for Apple and Google, but for everyone, for humanity as a whole, so that we can all benefit from this research that gets done just the way we all benefited from the moonshot. All right, thanks for listening. Check out other great speeches and other videos on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in the future.